Maniac Magee, Chapter 23. Grayson got the crimpets all right. He bought a whole box of 3-packs, with 10 packs to a box. That was 30 butterscotch crimpets. Maniac thought he must have climbed out of that buffalo pen right into heaven. Then Grayson took Maniac home. Home for the old man was the 2 Mills YMCA. He lived in a room on the 3rd floor. But he didn't take Maniac up there. He took him downstairs to the locker room. He got him a towel and a cake of soap, told him to take off his rags, and pointed the way to the showers. Maniac stayed in the shower for an hour. He hadn't done this since his last bath with the little ones. He smiled at the thought of them shrieking and splashing. The shower needles stung his scratches, but it was a good welcome back to town stinging. When Maniac finally forced himself from the shower, he found the old man waiting with clothes. Grayson's clothes. "I called the U.S. Army in to haul them buffalo rags away," he said. "They come in with gas masks on, and they use tongs to pick 'em up and put 'em in a steel box, and they took the box away to bury it at the bottom of the first mine shaft they come to." Maniac couldn't stop laughing. Neither could Grayson, especially when he got a load of the kid drowning in his clothes. An hour later, after a minor shopping spree, Maniac had clothes of his own. For the rest of the afternoon, they cruised around town, talking and eating crimpets. "So," said the old man, "now what are you going to do?" Maniac thought it over. "How about a job? I could work for the park like you." Grayson didn't answer that. He said, "Where do you think you're going to stay?" Maniac's answer was prompt. "The baseball room. It's perfect." A tiny idea was beginning to worm its way into Grayson's head. He could barely feel it as it brushed by all the claptrap in his brain. He ignored it. He said, "What about school?" Maniac was silent. Some butterscotch icing had stayed behind on a wrapper. He scooped it up and mopped it from his finger, wishing it were Mrs. Beale's and not his own. Grayson, who was not comfortable asking questions, was even less comfortable waiting for answers. "I said, what about school?" Maniac turned to him. "What about it?" "You gotta go. You're a kid, ain't ya?" "I'm not going." "But you gotta, don't ya? They'll make ya." "Not if they don't find me." The old man just looked at him for a while with a mixture of puzzlement and recognition, as though the fish he had landed might be the same one he had thrown away long before. "Why?" he said. Maniac felt why more than he knew why. It had to do with homes and families and schools, and how a school seems sort of like a big home, but only a day home, because then it empties out, and you can't stay there at night because it's not really a home. And you could never use it as your address, because an address is where you stay at night, where you walk right in the front door without knocking, where everybody talks to each other and uses the same toaster. So all the other kids would be heading for their homes, their night homes, each of them, hundreds, flocking from school like birds from a tree, scattering across town, each breaking off to his or her own place, each knowing exactly where to land. School, home. No, he was not going to have one without the other. "If you try to make me," he said, "I'll just start running." Grayson said nothing. What the kid said actually made him feel good, though he had no idea why, and the brushing little worm of a notion was beginning to tickle him now. He kept on driving. Chapter 24. They got back to the band shell just as they finished the last of the crimpets. Grayson looked at his watch. "Guess it's time to quit the job I never did today." "Time for dinner, too." Grayson was joking, but Maniac was serious when he piped. "Great, where to?" Dumbfounded, the old man drove back out of the park to the nearest diner, where he sat with a cup of coffee, while the boy wolfed down meatloaf and gravy, mashed potatoes, zucchini, salad, and coconut custard pie. Grayson had a way of jumping into a subject without warning. It was during Maniac's dessert that he abruptly said, "Them black people, they eat mashed potatoes too." Maniac thought he was kidding, then realized he wasn't. "Sure, Mrs. Beale used to have potatoes a lot, mashed in every other way." "Mrs. who?" "Mrs. Beale. Do you know the Beales? Off of 7028 Sycamore Street?" The old man shook his head. "Well, they were my family. I had a mother and father and a little brother and a sister my age, and a dog. My own room, too." Grayson stared out the diner window as if digesting this information. "How about meatloaf?" "Huh? They eat that, too?" "Sure, meatloaf, too, and peas and corn, you name it." "Cake?" Maniac beamed. Oh man, you kidding. Mrs. Beale makes the best cakes in the world. Grayson's eyes narrowed. Toothbrushes, they use them? Maniac fought not to smile. Absolutely. We all had our toothbrushes hanging in the bathroom. I know that, said Grayson, impatient, but is theirs the same as ours? No difference that I could see. You didn't drink out of the same glass? Absolutely we did. This information seemed to shock the old man. Maniac laid down his fork. Grayson, they're just regular people like us. I was never in a house of theirs. Well, I'm telling you, it's the same. Their bathtubs and refrigerators and rugs and TVs and beds. Grayson was wagging his head. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? It was after dark when they got back to the baseball equipment room. The worm in Grayson's head had long since ceased to be a tiny tickle. It was now a maddening itch. As with all such itchworms, it would exit by only one route, the mouth. He said, I was thinking, maybe you want to come over to my place. This here floor's pretty hard. He tapped his foot to show how hard. The grizzled gray old park hand could never know how much Maniac was tempted or how deeply the offer touched him. Neither could Maniac explain that the bad luck he always seemed to have with parents had led him to the conclusion that he'd better stick to himself. Oh, it's not so bad here, he said. Look. He lay down on the chest protectors and closed his eyes. Ah, just like a mattress. I can feel myself dozing off already. And then, not wanting to hurt the old man's feelings, he quickly added, Hey, I told you everything about me. How about you? He pulled Grayson's coat over himself. A bedtime story? Grayson snorted. Story? I don't know no stories. Sure you do, Maniac prodded. About yourself. You know about you. Everybody has a story. Not me. Grayson was edging for the door. I ain't got no story. I ain't nobody. I work at the park. You live at the Y. You drive the park pickup. You like butterscotch crimpets. Grayson shook his head. Not as much as you. I was just eating them to be friendly, so you wouldn't have to eat them all by yourself. And there's another thing about you, Maniac joked. You're a liar. They both laughed. Grayson opened the door. Wait, called Maniac. What did you want to grow up to be when you were a kid? Grayson paused in the doorway. He looked out into the night. A baseball player, he said. He turned out the light and closed the door. Chapter 25. In the morning, Grayson bought Maniac an egg McMuffin, and a large orange juice. He bought the same thing for himself, so they ate breakfast together in the baseball equipment room. You sent me to bed without a story last night, Maniac kidded. Grayson brushed a yellow speck of egg from his white stubble. I got no stories, I told you. You wanted to be a baseball player. That ain't no story. Well, did you become one? Grayson drank half his orange juice. Just the minors, he muttered. Maniac yelped. The minors? Couldn't never make it to the majors. There was a frayed weariness in the old man's words, as though they had long since worn out. Grayson, the minors? Man, you must have been good. What position did you play? Grayson said pitcher. This word, unlike the others, was not worn at all, but fresh and robust. It startled Maniac. It declared, I am not what you see. I am not a line lane, pickup driving, live at the inn, bee-brained park hand. I am not rickety, whiskered worm chow. I am a pitcher. Maniac had sensed there was something more to the old man. Now he knew what it was. Grayson, what's your first name? The old man fidgeted. Earl. But call me Grayson like everybody. He looked at the clock on the wall. Gotta go. Grayson, wait. I'm late for work. You ought to be in school. He was gone. Grayson returned at noon, bearing Zeps and Zodas, and was not allowed to leave until he told Maniac one story about the minor leagues. So he told the kid about his first day in the minors, with Bluefield, West Virginia, in the Appalachian League, Class D. Can't get no lower in than that, he told the kid. That's where you broke in. Don't have D-ball no more. He told about thumbing a ride to Bluefield and when he got there, going up to a gas station attendant and asking which way to the ballpark. And the gas station man told him, sure, but first I gotta ask you something. You're a new ball player, right? Just coming on board. And Grayson said, yep, that's right. And the man said, I thought so. Well, then you're just gonna want to make your first stop right over there. He pointed across the street. That there restaurant, the Blue Star. You just go on in there and sit yourself down and tell the waitress you want the biggest steak on the menu. And anything else you want to because it's all on the house. The Blue Star treats every new rookie to his first meal in town free. He gave a wink. They want your business. Great, thought Grayson, and he did just that. Only when he got up and left, the restaurant owner came running after him down the street, all mad at Grayson for skipping out. And when Grayson told him he was a rookie just picking up his free first meal, the owner got even madder. Seems like the gas station man was a real card and liked to welcome dumb rookies with his little practical joke. And that's how it came to be that when the Bluefield Bullets took the field that day, they did so without the services of their new pitcher, who was back in the kitchen of the Blue Star restaurant doing dishes to work off a 16-ounce steak, half a boiled chicken, and 2 pieces of rhubarb pie. After a story like that, Maniac couldn't just stay behind, so he tagged along when Grayson went back to work. He helped the old man raise a new fence around the children's petting farm yard. When the park superintendent came around and asked about the kids, Grayson said it was his nephew come to visit for a while. The superintendent who managed the budget said, "We can't pay him, you know." And Grayson said, "Fine, no problem," and that was that. From then on, Maniac was on the job with Grayson every afternoon. They raised fences, mended fences, hauled stone, patched asphalt, painted, trimmed trees. They ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, sometimes in the equipment room, sometimes at a restaurant. They spent weekends together. All the while, Grayson told baseball stories, insisting all along, "I ain't got no stories." He told about the Appalachian League and the Carolina League and the Pecos Valley League and the Buckeye and the Mexican Leagues, about the Paducah Twin Oaks and the Natchez Pelicans and the Jessup Georgia Browns and the Laredo Laureates. All minor league teams, minor league baseball. Sleazy hotels, sleazy buses, sleazy stadiums, sleazy fans, sleazy water buckets, curveballs and bus fumes and dreams of the majors, clean sheets, and an umpire at every base. Funny stories, happy stories, sad stories, just plain baseball stories. The happiest story being the one about Willie Mays' very last at-bat in the minor leagues before he went up to the New York Giants and immortality. While it was okay, Grayson himself, who had last crack at Mays in the 9th inning of a game with Indianapolis. And what did Grayson do? All he did was set the say-hey kid down swinging on 3 straight curveballs. Saddest story was the one about the scout who came down from the Toledo Mud Hens. The Mud Hens had a roster slot, and the scout had a notion to fill it with the pitcher with the wicked curveball, name of Earl Grayson. This was Grayson's big chance, for the Mud Hens were Class AAA ball, one short step from the majors. The night before the game, Grayson spent half of it on his knees by his bed praying, and even 5 minutes before the game, in the dugout, he bent down, pretending to tie his shoe, and closed one eye and prayed. "Please let me win this ball game," which was something since he had never gone to a church in his life. "God must have fainted," he said to Maniac. And indeed, maybe God did, or maybe he only listened to major leaguers, because Grayson took the mound and proceeded to pitch the flat-out, awfulest game of his life. His curveball wasn't curving, his sinker wasn't sinking, his knuckler wasn't knuckling. The batters were teeing off as if it were the invasion of Normandy Beach. Before the 3rd inning was over, the score was 12-0 and Grayson was in the showers. He was 27 years old then, and that was the closest he would ever get to the big show. He hung on for 13 more years, a baseball junkie, winding up in some hot tamale league in Guanajuato, Mexico, until his curveball could no longer bend around so much as a chili pepper, and his fastball was slower than a senorita's answer. He was 40 out of baseball and, for all intents and purposes, out of life. All those years in the game, and all he was fit to do was clean a restroom or sweep a floor or lay a chalk line. Or far, far down the road, tell stories to a wide-eyed, homeless kid.